Okay, we're going to call our meeting to order and ask Ms. Reyes, she'll call roll for us, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Bryant,
Here.
Commissioner Rowley, Mr. Pomeroy,
Here.
Mr. Mondragon,
Here.
Dr. Smith, Marcus,
Nope.
Vince DeMaio, Commissioner Spear.
Here.
That's everybody.
Okay, thank you. Move down to the approval of the minutes of April the 11th.
Mr. Chairman, reading the minutes, move for approval.
Okay. Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of April the 11th. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same with those opposed? Okay. And I heard Dr. Smith, so we have an approval. Number 4 is discussion and recommendation regarding Epcor's request for the city of Clovis to act as an applicant for a New Mexico Environment Department drinking water revolving loan fund pre-application. Mr. Howalt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While my name is on this one, it's actually going to be Mr. Huerta with Epcor. So while we are waiting on him, I'm going to go ahead and give my update if you don't mind, and then Orlando could proceed with his while we wait on Mark to arrive, if that's okay.
That'll be fine.
All right, thank you, sir. And so just looking at the annual delivery for the reuse project itself, of course, as you all know, we're not really in the construction phase anymore with the reuse project. There's some minor odds and ends, some meters that we still got to get installed at Berry Elementary as well as at the golf course. However, we still are delivering water to, at least to the golf course, not to Berry Elementary yet. And so this last month of May, we haven't gotten the June report yet, we delivered a little bit, about 31.5 million gallons of water for the entire month. And how that compares to 21 or last year was 13.7. So you can see the amount of difference it makes of delivering water to the golf course itself. In fact, we delivered in May 15.3 million gallons of water to the golf course, and in April 10.4 million gallons. So I expect that only to increase with the hotter temperatures that we have typically in June, or in June, July, and August. So I expect those numbers to continue to increase. That brings us to a total delivery for the year, once again not including June, of 127.3 million gallons, and compared to 114 million gallons from the previous year. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding the reuse project itself.
Okay. Any questions?
Mr. Howell, what was 2021? You said it was 13 point something million?
Yeah, 13.7 in May. And we delivered 31.4 this year in May.
That's just remarkable. That was a great project, great delivery, and it's saving our drinking water.
Yeah. I think it's saving, what, over 1 million gallons a day.
Yes, I
Drinking
mean, but we put out about 800,000 gallons a day on the golf course alone.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
it's a significant amount.
If anybody's been by the golf course in the last 30 days,
Yes.
you can see a huge difference in that course by the amount of water we're putting on it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And then
Looks great.
the next phase, of course, there was some bid alternates that we haven't been able to award over the last couple of years. And so as we close out this and close out our Water Trust Board funds from this last application cycle, we'll go ahead and start preparing our application for the upcoming cycle to where we can maybe get to those bid alternates, which include getting to Sandia Elementary, getting to Clovis High School, down to Dennis Chavez, over to the Freshman Academy and Cameo Elementary. And once that's, well, it used to be about $1.5 million worth of projects. It's just obviously gone up since the last time we did our cost estimates. But once we finish that, that would be the entire system as it was originally designed, building out. So looking forward to getting that application in.
Well, I know we had talked previously about the schools participating in our reuse program, and evidently they are, by what you're saying.
Yeah, and specifically at Yuck Elementary right now, and we did meet with the school board, and they reaffirmed that wanting to tie on in the locations that we have installed meters already. For example, at 14th Street that is, not Bickley. Yeah, is that James Bickley on 14th Street? Yes.
Yes.
So James Bickley, like we have a meter sitting out there, just waiting for them to connect to it. And they, like I said, reassured us at the school board that they would tie into those. They've had some changeover in staff here recently, and so I'll be getting with their new operations director to make him aware of where we have those locations and just advise him of the project in general.
Great. Good project.
Mr. Chairman, one question if I may.
Sure.
Justin, do we know what the total cost for building that reuse project was?
I want to say currently we're at around $16 million. But I'm happy to, let me pull up those numbers and I'll email the group out a good solid number.
That's a good ballpark
Okay.
figure for me.
I do remember when we started this project, it was at 16.5 million.
We're actually coming in about on our cost estimates.
Good, good, yeah.
So, great project.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions for the used project? No? Do you have anything else?
No, sir, and just to let you know that Commissioner Rowley has joined us online.
Okay, good. Welcome, Commissioner Rowley. Okay, we'll go back to our discussion and recommendation regarding Epcor's request for the city of Clovis to act as an applicant for a New Mexico Environment Department Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund pre-application, and that goes to Mr. Huerta with Epcor. Welcome to the meeting. It's all right. Gave Mr. Holwell a chance to go ahead and get his
Thank you,
update
Mark.
out of the way. Thank you, Mark.
Morning. How you doing? Good. Good.
Thank you.
Good morning. Again, apologies for being a little bit late. Had a couple new hires start with us this morning, so I was getting them introduced to everyone before heading out. But what we have here, and we've been working for a little bit, I would say, or visiting with the Highland Dairy. Everyone's aware that that's the dairy that was most heavily impacted by the PFAS and the current plume that's everybody's been tracking. So with that, what we determined was that there was possibly an opportunity to take that water and use it for municipal purposes. Basically to, it's in a better area. It's kind of within that paleo channel still. And it's close to our infrastructure, which is, what makes this more of a feasible option for us than some of the paleo channel wells that are, west and north of the airport. So, or of the air base. So, with that, we had just been talking, and then we came across the chance or this to be able to do a study. So we put together a kind of a real preliminary study. That's all just done in-house within Epcor, our staff, and the costs are costs that we were able to use by looking at projects similar in scope and size, although those are very loose figures, right? So, but those would not, I'm sure, be the final figures once we, got into doing the study a little bit more. But that's basically what this is. It's there's a chance to get some money through the NMED revolving fund. This is a part of the fund that's set aside for these emerging contaminants. So that's something to point out, is that this project would not be in competition with any of the other initiatives that are going on, whether it be the U pipeline or the water conservation that you guys are working on, or that separately. So these are funds that were earmarked for these types of projects, for these emerging contaminants. Currently, right now, as of the last time we talked about NMED, they do not have one of these on the books. They're very excited about getting one of these on the books to show the need for it in our state, right? So it would be, kind of the first of its kind if we were to apply for this funds to do this study and then really find out the feasibility of it, and if it's something that we'd want to pursue. So it would be a matter of taking that water and, pump and treat, and then adding it to our system, taking it to our storage facilities where it'll be chlorinated, and then blended with our other groundwater sources, and then, put out for municipal use. Again, they really said that the first phase of this is just to get this pre-application in, just to show that there's a need and show that, that we have a project scope, and then it would progress from there, so, Epcor is a privately owned company. We're not able to apply for those funds, so it was recommended that we come to the city and see if the city would be willing to do that pre-application, just to get it on the books so it can get reviewed, and then see if in fact we could receive those funds to be able to do this study. It's a good project in the sense that there are a large number of wells out there, but they're all within a pretty confined area. So it makes the ability for us to kind of bring all those together into one pipeline going to a treatment facility somewhere near the site, and then taking it to our existing transmission line to be able to bring it into town. So that really cuts down on the amount of infrastructure that we're looking at. And this conceptual, we're basing it off of about 2,500 gallons per minute, which is about 15 wells that we identified out within that Highland Dairy area. We looked at wells that were at least 125, 150, and 200 gallons above. So we settled on about 15, 16 wells that we would plan to, bring into one singular pipeline over to a treatment facility, treat it for PFAS, and then go ahead and send it over to our existing transmission line.
Okay. Mark, I know we're just getting started on this. Do you have any idea of a timeline as far as what kind of time we're looking at to?
No, not really. Again, it'll be based on, a lot of it will be based on, when we get the application in, how long it takes it to review, and then when we could start receiving the funds. I think, we have already started the conversations internally, so, it's just a matter of us getting with an engineer that we select to help us and to get the study done. And then construction after that, we'd fall under the same approval guidelines of the NMED, so we would be at their mercy on that as to how quick we could get any of this approved to be able to actually construct and do the well conversions and things of that nature.
Sounds like a great conservation tool.
Yeah, I mean, it's taking these agricultural wells and putting them into, municipal use, which cuts down on the acre feet allotment per year, from 3 to 1.29, so, and really kind of killing two birds with one stone in this respect, and, being able to pump and treat the PFAS, so it's going to help with the plume, and then actually put that water to beneficial use, whereas now it's not really.
Yeah, be great. Okay, any questions?
I do, Mr. Chairman. The federal agencies just reduced the contamination levels from, what was it, 73 trillion parts per something, down to about 6, I think it was. Can you actually filter out so it's acceptable for drinking purposes?
There are cases where yes, they've seen that it can be done. There's two primary ways that you use to treat, and that's with granulated activated carbon and then reverse osmosis. We would be looking at the granulated activated carbon in this study because internally we've decided or have come to the conclusion that that's the more affordable and better way to do it. But yeah, we believe that we can. That's part of what this study will help us determine, because we'll look at the levels within the wells and then see what we can do with it. So. And you're right, the EPA did set a new interim health advisory limit. So at some point that will become an MCL and it will become a regulated contaminant, right? So right now it's still unregulated. They are including it as part of the UCMR 5, which is the uncontaminated rule that they have. So every so many years we test for all the things that aren't on that list that we normally test for. This year they added PFAS, so definitely something they're going to be looking at. So the larger water systems will all be required to test for PFAS. Of course, we have been doing it on our own, since the onset of this deal, voluntarily. So, something that we've been keeping a very close eye on.
Mark, do you have any idea what the total cost will be for the water treatment plant and the infrastructure, ballpark figures?
I do not. I mean, those, again, there's some figures attached to that handout I gave you, but those were just us using numbers from similar projects and some other studies that we had done, and was able to pull together our our lease well program. So give us an idea of what a well conversion costs and things of that nature. But the treatment side of things, no, I do not.
And who's ultimately going to be paying for that? Taxpayers or Epcor or who?
That's still yet to be determined. There's some thought out there that if the water was deemed for municipal use, it could change the DOD stance on whether or not they would have to help pay for the cost of that cleanup, right, or that treatment. Whereas now, since it's considered ag, that they are not required in any way to deal with it at this point anyway.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I do just a couple, what was on the pre-application, Mark, how much are you considered applying? I know we've got some figures here.
It would be just for the study, and I think they said it could be upwards of $1 million. But don't quote me on that, but they're.
Okay.
Again, the pre-application is really the starter to it. It's a one page. I provided Justin with an example of the questions that's on there, and it's very just high level information that they need to kind of get the review process started.
Okay, thank you. And do you know that, is there a match requirement for the particular grant that they'll be applying on this one? Do you know?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm not aware of a match requirement for it. Obviously, with the various funding sources that have been coming out based off the infrastructure bill, the notice of funding opportunities vary. And so what this does is actually allows them to be eligible. Doesn't mean you have to be utilize the funds or accept the funds. And it's something that the city of Clovis does. And so we maintain our name on a list. That way, if something does come up, we can put in an application for it. I guess while I have the floor, I'd also, Member Spear, regarding the treatment process itself, this is already being done. And so it's being done actually up in the Colorado Springs area. I believe that they ultimately ended up using reverse osmosis. However, they treat it down to non-detect. And so it can, and the technology is there and capabilities are there to remove those contaminants out of the water before introducing it into a drinking water supply.
And that's what I was going to comment. Our office, Eastern Plains Council of Governments, just recently assisted the village of Floyd, New Mexico. Their RO unit, reverse osmosis unit, went down, and we were able to provide some Board of Finance, and we gave testimony before the Board of Finance Committee, and were able to get them the funds to fix that reverse osmosis so they can clean that water. Another question is, I know they had talked about filtering when all this occurred. Has any of the wells been filtered somehow? Is there any, do you remember, do you recall? I know that I understand that there was discussion of filtering some of the wells for the PFAS.
Just from me and experience with Highland Dairy and dealing with Mr. Scott out there, I know that he actually put in a filtration system on a couple of his wells just to be able to, water and whatnot. So they do work, as Justin said, they're doing it in other places. And it's something that we're all going to have to look at. As I think the numbers that the EPA just recently said are very aggressive numbers. They're actually below what the current lab standards are able to detect to. So they're, essentially saying non-detect. We know when they set those numbers below 2, because right now most labs can't detect below 2 parts per trillion. So anything below that, you're considered non-detect, right? So eventually, though, when that MCL is set, then we'll all have something that we're going to have to shoot towards. I mean, ultimately, we would always shoot towards non-detect, but we'll know more as this thing progresses.
Thank you, and I am aware of the pre-application process. Of course, that's where they'll put together the study, the cost, the timelines, the engineering costs and so forth, and so this is, so once you're approved on the pre-application, you get the money, you do the study, I'm assuming you'll come back and make a full application for the grant, and then we'll go from there? Is what I'm,
Yeah,
assuming
and
the
so
process.
typically, like I said, this gets your name on the list.
Right.
And so it makes you eligible to apply for funding. And then when the various programs come out, then you make direct application. So if this one, if there's an emerging contaminants grant that's out there, that this would make them already eligible to go out and apply for that grant. Everything obviously has to flow through the city of Clovis simply because
Right.
we're would be the fiscal agent for it. If there would be any match requirements to it, Epcor would obviously be the party that's be responsible for providing those matching funds.
yes, I would have assumed that. Okay. That's all I have.
Okay. Any other questions?
One question that I have, Mr. Chairman, is
Okay.
the proposed 2,500 gallons per minute, how does that compare to what you currently have within the system? And what type of impact would that have on your overall capabilities?
Well, right now, I mean, maybe to kind of put it in perspective, that 2,500 gallons per minute is above and beyond currently what our southern well field is able to produce. So, I mean, essentially, this could potentially replace our southern well field in what we're able to produce. So,
Thank you.
right now, I think we're able to produce with all wells about a little over 7,000 gallons per minute, or about 10.5 million gallons a day, right? So, with the 67 wells that we have in use right now.
How many per day was that? 10.5 million, is that what you said?
Correct. Currently, our wells are able to produce about 10.5 million a day.
Okay.
What's the current use we're using right now?
Between 7 and 8 million on average. For the month of June, I guess I was going to give an update anyway. So for the month of June, we were at about 7.3 million gallons as an average. So our peak day so far has been a little about 8.1. So our peak days have gone way down. Our average usage had gone down over the last 5 years and has kind of remained static. So we haven't seen a big change in it over the last several years as far as our average day demand.
And with the reuse water, that's significantly lowered your usage, hasn't it?
It certainly helped, yes. A lot of those places were able to come completely off of city water or Epcor water and go straight to just reuse.
Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, this is an action item to request the city of Clovis to act as an applicant. So we need a motion if you so desire.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and move that we recommend for Epcor to seek out a pre-application in partnership with the city of Clovis to act as an applicant for the New Mexico Environmental Department Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund pre-application.
Okay, we do have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we do have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, Commissioner?
Aye.
Okay. And it is unanimous, and so it is approved. Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Do you have anything else to add as far as the updates?
So right now, as far as projects go, of course, we're geared up for the airport water line extension. Still hoping that will be able to break ground about mid-August. We're also, and we've secured a contractor for that. It's going to be J&H Services out of Albuquerque that'll be constructing that project for us. Also working on the 7th Street project as part of the storm drain and road improvement project that the city is doing. We're going to go in there and also change out some mains, upsize some mains, put in some new fire hydrants within that work zone, so taking advantage of that. Kay Barnett will be doing that work for us, and so we're ready for that. And we just completed our annual performances on all our wells, so we're just compiling all that data and it'll, getting it, available. And, I think that's it right now as far as projects goes. Like I said, the summer, so far has not been bad. Our average day demand is staying consistent with what it's been over the last several years. We're not seeing those big heavy peak days. And working on, valve maintenance, and then also fire hydrant maintenance is taking place right now. We do that annually. And, so yeah, that's about it.
Mr. Chairman, Mark, any more activity or any other that you've heard south of Clovis with that situation that we had dealt with several years ago?
With the decreased wells
Yeah.
no, I mean, other than the line extension that we did and making that water available to those that were able to connect to that line, we still get a few service requests in from that. And we have had a few requests for what it would take to get water out there in the form of a line extension. So we realized that the need is still there, and so,
Mark, how many connected to that line?
oh, 12, 15 maybe,
Yeah.
just off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's an increase from the last time, because I think the last time we had like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And we did work with some of those folks to try to start a water cooperative, and we couldn't get them organized to get that thing going.
What's the approximate cost to tie onto that line? Do you have any idea?
If you're just getting a new service request, those rates are built into our tariff. So like a 1-inch service is $700 plus tax. A 5/8 by 3/4 service is $550 plus tax. You know, if you wanted a 2-inch service, I don't think anybody would need one that size, but they're $1,500 plus tax. So all those rates are built into our tariffs. So it's a set rate.
Mr. Chairman, we also Epcor worked with Western Bank. I think Mr. Spear, I don't know if you were at that meeting or not, when we brought the Western Bank people here with their packages. They created a package so those folks can go ahead and, it was a low interest rate loan to try to tie in some of that. And I think some of them took advantage of it, but I don't know at this point how many.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you were there.
I was here. Yeah. Great. Okay. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I got one question. Mark, I've got a question that I've been asked by, I can't tell you how many people that live in the city, in the incorporated areas. Once the Ute pipeline is completed and you're servicing water from the Ute reservoir, do you have any idea how much, if any, their rates will increase?
I do not, and I don't know, to my knowledge, if there's actually been a number that the authority has worked on is what they believe that their rate will be. There'll be a cost associated with it. You know, there's gonna be the cost of getting it, you know, to Clovis plus the cost of treatment. So that'll be something that I believe that Epcor and the city, the member communities and the authority will have to work in unison, you know, when it comes time to really setting those rates. You know, as far as the rest of it goes, it's all just a pass-through for us to the customer, so we don't make any money on the water rates. That's not how we get our returns.
Okay. Anything else?
I did want to compliment, if you could carry this message over, Mark, to your folks, when we had that big geyser at 7th and Mitchell.
Yes.
You guys responded pretty quick on that one. I mean, it is a lot of water. And so your guys responded pretty quick, and I appreciate the work you guys do, and they do.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Anything else? Nope. Okay. Mark, thank you.
All right.
Appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move up to Mr. Ortega and the Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority update. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Do have a presentation here to so we go ahead and move on to the second slide, please. Just want to show you a little bit of our current activity. We have a lot going on these days thanks to the new funding that we've been able to obtain. through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, along with state funding and local funding. And we'll talk a little more about that a little later. But just kind of want to give you a snapshot right now of the current projects that we have going. We have 7 projects that we've been working on through fiscal year 22, and those are outlined there. On the next page, I can go more in detail on each of those. We move on. For example, Finished Water 3, we're looking at constructing that pipeline. That pipeline connects from the main junction vault over at Cannon Air Force Base and goes to Portales. We're building that in 2 phases. We built the first phase, 17.2 miles, and then actually it's a little less than that. It's about 14 miles, and then we have another about 4 miles of pipeline that will connect to the Lime Street facility in town. Originally, we had planned to go out to the Johnson Hill tank facility out on US 70, but the city of Portales had asked us if we would consider realigning that, or considered a realignment of that pipeline to go down to Lime Street. This was done, this request was made about 3 years ago. And the authority took a look at that and determined that that could be, that could happen. And the reason that the city of Portales requested that is that they wanted to have the ability to have a redundant supply to their community, being that if we were to connect to the Johnson Hill tanks, then if something were to occur, the whole town then would not have water. But by going to Lime Street, now if they would have two supplies going into town and be able to provide water to the city. So doing that in 2 phases. The first phase, which what we call Finished Water 3A, is just about complete. We're about 95% complete now, completing some vaults there and doing land restoration. So that's going very well. The next item is Finished Water 1, which is 100% of the design is complete on that. We actually published a request for proposals on June 15th, and proposals are due September 7th. That's a 16 miles worth of pipeline, 39-inch in diameter, which connects just northwest of Cannon Air Force Base on Curry Road R, and travels 15.5 miles north to the proposed water treatment facility. So that project itself is going very well. Next one is Raw Water 3, which is the next segment just north of the proposed water treatment plant. And we're currently working on 90% design on that project. That's 26 miles of 42 to 48-inch diameter pipeline. And then the last one on this page is the Texaco Lateral. We've completed the planning study on that. We've been working on 3 alternatives and have really come to the conclusion that alternative 3 is the best alternative for this pipeline. We are now currently working with Epcor because we would be connecting to the city of Clovis's pipeline at the airport, but it also connects to the Epcor system. So we're currently working on agreements on that, long-term agreements on that with those entities in order to be able to move forward with alternative 3, which would certainly shorten the pipeline to about 4 miles of pipeline there. Next slide. Raw Water 2 is a 3-mile section of 42-inch diameter pipe, which is the pipeline that goes down or up the caprock. And we're currently working on alignment study there and right of entry activity. We're also doing geotech and survey. We've just about started that. Next item is Raw Water 1, which is the last segment to the reservoir. That's a 28-mile portion of pipeline, 42-inch in diameter, that connects at the base of the caprock, at the bottom of the caprock, and takes us to the intake facility at Reservoir. current activities now include alignment planning and right of entry there. We also are engaging in geotech and survey will begin here this month. And then the last bullet point on this page is the Elida Lateral and Pump Station. We've engaged in that planning and right-of-way and lateral alternatives. In fact, we're meeting on Wednesday with the Elida Lateral Committee to present those alternatives and hopefully make a determination as to the best alternative on that. This is a 30-mile pipeline, 4 to 6 inch in diameter. Next slide. I wanted to show you a couple of pictures of our finished water 3A pipeline construction. This is a 20-inch PVC pipe that's going to Portales. Next slide. You can see how that pipeline is installed with the bedding material underneath it, to the sides of it and above it, and then backfilled and then filled to the top and then restored back to its original situation with the land. Next slide. This is a picture of the clearing and grubbing right before they began excavating the trench. Next slide. So I want to just quickly talk a little bit about the passage of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. I think we're all familiar with that now. As it states up there, the President signed into law the bill on November 15th of 2021. That infrastructure bill earmarked $1 billion toward completing the federally authorized rural water projects, of which we are one of, and has given us the opportunity to move forward in completing the construction of the Eastern New Mexico rural water system. Below that is the New Mexico legislative session. This past session we had great success with our legislators and governor in working with us in adding to that federal funding on the state level with their 15% match. Next slide is a breakdown of the funding that has come our way in just fiscal year 22. So with that, with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act funding, we were able to secure $160 million, and then an additional what we call plus-up funding from our congressional delegation of $17.4 million for a total of $177,400,000. During the legislative session, we were able to have the commitment of two capital outlay funding sources there. Senate Bill 212 with $20 million, and then House Bill 2 with capital outlay of $10 million for a total of $30. This year, we also, the authority pursued a drinking water state revolving loan of $32 million for their 10% match, along with the city of Clovis also applied for a loan of $15 million for a total of $47 million. Of course, $47 million is not the 10% match of the above, but we'll carry those additional funds over to the next fiscal years. Total funding for 2022, we have $228,140,000 just for this year alone. We are currently working also to prepare a request to the Federal Bureau of Reclamation for fiscal year 23 funding. Those discussions are actually already taking place. Next slide. So this is our 5-year schedule of our construction project along with the funding. The federal funding for the infrastructure bill will come in a 5-year period starting in fiscal year 22. So there will be funding in year 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26 in order for them to distribute that infrastructure funding. Next slide. So another page here of current or projects that are starting now, starting in July 1st. These are projects that the authority has, the authority board has approved, and we are underway with these projects. And these are The funding that you saw there for fiscal year '22 will be covering these projects here. So these projects here are in addition to the 7 projects that you saw on the prior page. So as you can see, lots of activity here. Next slide. We look at our projects as task orders. This last slide that you just saw, these are the task orders associated with that. Task order 15 would be to obtain survey and geotechnical data for all of the remaining phases of the overall project. Task order 16 would be to obtain right of entry, easements, and properties for the remaining project phases. Task order 17 would be to complete the pipeline design for the remaining portions of the project to 90 and then 100% level. And then task order 18 would be to complete the pump station designs for the remaining portions of the project to a 90% level. And task order 19 would be to complete the design of the water treatment plant to a 90% level. Next slide. Task order 20 would provide services during construction for the upcoming Raw Water 3 and Texaco packages. Task order 21 would be special services, permitting, construction management, and project management. Finish Water 1 would begin construction of Finish Water 1 pipeline connecting Finish Water 2 to the proposed water treatment plant. That project will begin right after the award, probably around September or October timeframe. Construction will begin probably winter, December, January of this coming year. And then the Texaco Lateral pipeline will begin design and construction on the Texaco Lateral pipeline very soon. Next slide. That's it. Open for any questions if you may have some.
Yeah, Orlando, thank you. Appreciate the update. I have a question on the Texaco Lateral, tying into the line that we're putting out to the airport. Do you have any idea what the cost savings to the authority is?
It is. We estimated we had 3 alternatives. Alternative 1 was connecting to Finish Water 2, which is on Brady and Martin Luther King. So we would be connecting to that system there where the Epcor, 2 large Epcor tanks are, and then we would be turning the corner there and traveling east on Brady all the way to Texaco, and then going under the railroad, under the highway, and then connecting to that. I believe that estimate, and I don't have it with me, and I'm trying to remember that number, but it was in excess, I believe, about 24 million. This project here, if we're able to go with alternative 3, reduces that to about a little over 4 miles of pipeline. And we're looking at using all of a right-of-way, state right-of-way, and have been in communication with the Department of Transportation on that. So we would eliminate you having to purchase easements there. We may have to purchase a few, but very, very few. We're looking at that project reduced down to about 8 million.
Wow.
Commissioner Spear?
Yes, sir. I didn't know if he was finished.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
I was just trying to get the savings if we
Thank
use
you,
that line.
Orlando.
It's pretty
Yeah.
substantial, so.
For the update. That's a great savings. You keep talking about the water treatment plant. Where's that going to be located?
It'll be at the very end of the Finish Water 1 pipeline at about 15.5 miles north of, right about where the housing northwest of Cannon Air Force Base, the military housing ends on the north end, 15.5 miles directly north of there.
And whose property is that?
I believe it's the Paula property.
Paula property. Are we, meaning you folks, going to have to compensate him for using his land?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Do you know how much that's going to be?
Well, we go through the process of appraising the properties and then determining the just compensation for that.
Have you decided what that is yet?
Not at this time.
Okay. Isn't he the father-in-law of the city commissioner? Paula?
Yes, sir.
Wouldn't it be a conflict of some type for her to be voting or discussing anything to do with the payment or construction of the pipeline?
The city of Clovis does not approve that. It's
Correct.
the authority.
Well, they're in the process of approving tax increase to help pay for this.
Then every taxpayer would be a conflict of interest, don't you think?
No, not if my father-in-law is being compensated for allowing a water treatment plant to be built on his property, and he's making money from the utility authority and the taxpayers. I think it'd be a conflict. Maybe you ought to check with the attorney and.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman and members here, we have checked with our counsel, and it is not a conflict of interest. I mean, it would be only a conflict of interest if she was directly profiting from that, and she is not. And so we've checked with them, and there is no conflict of interest.
Okay, and the only reason I ask that is because we have a commissioner who has a conflict on a different issue, and we check with the attorney and if it's any direct or indirect through a family member or blood family, like father-in-law, mother-in-law, sister, brother, it would be a conflict. So
Yeah, once again, the negotiations are between the Water Utility Authority and the particular property owner. Our commissioner is not involved with the Water Utility Authority.
no, but the money being paid to him are tax dollars.
Well, once again, I guess back to Mr. Ortega's point, I mean, that everything we do in government is paid for with tax dollars.
Yes.
And so that would be, I mean, anything you did, anything that the county commission does would be a direct conflict because it's paid for with tax dollars.
But I'm not making anything on anything.
Neither is she.
And his brother could be making a profit on a business that we're developing an ordinance on, so he's excused himself and he's abstained from any discussion or voting.
Yeah, and that could be his particular choice and his decision to disclose and abstain, but
Wasn't his choice, the lawyer told him, no, you have to stay out of it. That's why I bring this up.
Okay.
I was just curious.
yeah, and we have checked with counsel, and our counsel says it's not a conflict.
Okay, cool. Another question is, what are the anticipated operation and maintenance costs once this pipeline is completed?
We are working to update those costs right now, and I'll get back to you as soon as we get them.
I've been told it's somewhere around 12 million. Is that anywhere close?
It's hard to say with that right now. Like I said, we're working on those updates. I'd hate to throw a number out there.
Well, again, I'm concerned because you've been in this business for how many years now, and you don't know what's going to cost to operate the pipeline once it's completed?
We have estimates, but they're not updated estimates, sir.
What's the latest estimate you have?
I don't have that with me right now.
Okay, then let me go on to something else. $228 million for this year alone, right? Does that include the 47 million you were talking about?
Not all of it.
Okay, and what is the total cost to date, including this $228 million that we're spending on this pipeline?
The remaining portion of the pipeline,
No, what have you totally, to this date, how much have you spent or dedicated to this pipeline to this date?
I
today?
believe it's a little over 50 million that we've expended on construction, and the remaining portion of the remaining project estimation is at about 730 million.
730 million remaining?
Yes.
And of that 730 million, how much do you have promised to you already?
Promised.
Yeah, I mean, do you have $730 million?
Well, we will have it with this funding that's in place.
Okay, and is that the anticipated total costs for the pipeline, $730 million?
It is, yes, sir.
And you anticipate having that money as of when?
Well, within that 5-year time frame.
Oh, okay, within 5 years. Okay, and you don't have any idea what the increase in cost would be to your customers?
No, but I did pull up some estimates that on water costs that were done about 6 months ago, and this was at raw water cost per 1,000 gallons is $2.23 in future value. And that would be, the future value at that time was about 15 years down the road, which with this new funding, we hope to have the project completed within 6 to 8 years. So that certainly reduces that time frame. as far as treated water costs of $5.03 in the future value per 1,000 gallons.
Okay, but we don't know exactly what the customer's gonna have to pay once it's completed and,
At this point, the authority has, and it could change, but at this time, the authority says that the water cost will be delivered at the same price to all members. And at that point, the member can do what they want to do with that rate. Whether they want to, pass that same price to their customers, they can do that, or if they want to increase, that's up to each member community.
so we don't have a figure? No,
That's up to the member community.
okay.
You'll have to talk to
And
them.
one follow-up back to the operations and maintenance, let's assume, for the sake of argument, it is gonna be 12 million. Who's gonna pay that?
The system itself will pay for it, yes. So the plan is that that this water authority, the system itself in water sales will end up paying for itself. No different than any other utility that's out there, an enterprise system.
Okay, so if it's 12 million per year hypothetically, and eventually that's gonna go on to the customer, is it not?
Correct. We can't give the water free to.
Well, I understand that, but.
We have to sell it.
How much does the water company make now, for the water they sell versus adding another 12 million on top of that for operation and maintenance?
Well, I guess it comes down to cost per gallon. And so, for example, based off of the amount of usage from an Epcor standpoint, they sell water based off of per gallon. And so their current rates are average between $4 and $5 based off the current tariffs, based off the amount of usage. And so it's a tiered system. And so the more you use, the higher the rate goes, the less you use, the lower the rate is.
I understand that.
And so if it's $3 per gallon and then they're selling it to Epcor for, I'm making up numbers here, $2 per gallon, then the cost to the customer would be that $5 per gallon.
Okay, I'm just looking at an additional $12 million is a lot of money to putting on, so there's going to be
You
a
have to
substantial.
understand that once delivery of surface water is coming through the system, then Epcor will not likely have to expend as much money on their current system. So it's basically you're replacing groundwater with surface water to some degree in whatever they choose to do in a percentage.
Correct.
Right.
And so I guess to expand on what Mr. Ortega just said, I mean, if Epcor, and we're going to use Epcor in this particular situation, as we're in Clovis, their operation and maintenance costs could decrease because they're not having to maintain their well fields, et cetera, electricity to pump, provide and deliver water. And so theoretically, theirs could potentially decrease, obviously, which would help offset some of the cost increase of purchasing the water from the Water Utility Authority. The other thing I'd like to remind everyone is that Epcor's rates are regulated by the PRC. And so there's certain parameters in which they operate within. And so as Mr. Huerta mentioned earlier, it's a pass-through cost. And so they're not allowed by regulation to mark that water up and generate any profits off of the purchase and sale of the Water Utility Authority waters. And so whatever Epcor is paying essentially the city of Clovis, because we own the water, and then we turn around and pay the Water Utility Authority, but that's a pass-through. They're not allowed to mark that up any.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You know, just want to point out today that in present value, the treated water would be at $2.07. The future value, as I mentioned to you, was 16 years into the future as of 6 months ago. So if we're able to cut that back, and if we're able to even be more efficient than these estimates, then that price would be less.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Hey, Commissioner Bryant, I believe you had another question?
Well, I think Justin kind of cleared it up. I just wanted to make sure that we knew that once Epcor got a hold of that water, it was just a pass-through. So Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority is selling the water to Epcor.
Correct.
And Epcor is just gonna turn around as a pass-through, and that cost will come back to the user.
Commissioner
that
Bryant,
correct?
we will not sell to Epcor. We will deliver the water to the city of Clovis, and then they have the
Okay,
agreement.
but yeah, what I'm getting at, I guess, is that
Correct.
Justin
You're
said
correct.
it's just a pass-through, and Epcor won't be doing any markup.
That'll be between the city of Clovis and Epcor.
Yeah.
And that's what we, in order to treat a fairness, I believe, and the authority board is trying to find the best way to do that. And the delivery and price of that, we're not gonna be charging one more or the other.
So each entity, like the city of Clovis, Texaco, Lateral, will set their own rate,
Exactly.
and then it'll be just a pass-through through Epcor. So I just want to reiterate that Epcor is not profiting.
No,
Is
they're
that
not. And
correct?
it's very similar with what they do with their leased wells right now. And so when they lease a well from an ag producer, the rate that they pay that ag producer for that water that's a pass-through already in the system. Can they, for their infrastructure improvements that they make to get the water, yes, that is allowed as a profit-making ability within Epcor itself, the infrastructure. But the purchase of the water is not allowed to be marked up by PRC.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that explanation.
Yeah, and really just to echo off of that, I mean, yeah, our rates are very structured, to even change our rates, it goes through a rate case, which I think the one that we just recently had, or maybe a year or two ago, we hadn't had one in like 9 years. So we'll look at things, we'll do cost studies to see, when it is the right time to go in for another rate case. But it's like a quasi trial. You go in and there's examination and cross-examination, you prove out everything. And like Justin said, we really only get a rate of return on infrastructure that is already in the ground and in service. So as we make improvements, that's the kind of things that we'll go in on the rate case and say, hey, this is what we did, X amount of years, and now we're looking for a return on that. But it's a long process, it's an arduous process, and it's not something that any of us relish doing. So we are all good stewards of the things that we do to ensure that we keep the rates down, because ultimately that's what the PRC is there for, to protect the ratepayer, and the utility, right, to make sure that things are fair and just. So it's not something that once we start receiving purchased surface water that we're going to say, okay, our rates are now this. We don't have the ability to do that.
And those rate cases are tedious, as Mark mentioned. I mean, from a testimony standpoint, from the city of Clovis interjects, and we have our own expert witnesses and economists that review all of their information. The state has their own experts and economists that look through all of the information. Of course, Epcor has their economists that they've helped prepared, and it's quite the process of those experts looking through those numbers and making sure that the items that are eligible are within the proposed rate cases, the items that are not eligible. Having sat through this last rate case, it's a process for them to increase their rates.
And the same goes for the water authority. You are the owners of the water authority, so you have a lot of say in rates there. You have 3 members that serve on the authority, and the authority's mission is not to get wealthy off of selling water. It's basically, its mission is to deliver water to its member communities, cover its costs.
Mr. Mondragon, I believe you had a question.
Go ahead, did you have?
Yeah, I got to follow up. I was confused. You said that the utility authority will be delivering water to the Epcor system. You will not be selling water to Epcor.
That's correct.
How will the utility authority make money to pay the estimated $12 million operations and maintenance?
It'll be paid by the city of Clovis as residents. Yeah, the customers.
Okay.
And that's true with all the entities. And so the way that the statute is set up is there's member communities that make up the Water Utility Authority. It's the Water Utility Authority's responsibility to deliver it to the city of Clovis. In this particular instance, since we don't own the water company, the Water Utility Authority is delivering it to us. The city of Clovis then would have a contract with Epcor to deliver that water. But once again, that's just in our particular situation, since the city of Clovis doesn't own the water company. We'll just pass it on through, I would assume, based on, to keep the rates down. Why would the city of Clovis take whatever Epcor or Water Utility Authority is delivering to us, mark it up, which is just going to end up on our ratepayers anyways, our citizens, so it wouldn't make sense for us to mark it up again.
Very glad you said that.
Mr. Mondragon.
Yeah, thank you for that report, Orlando. I was just going to ask, and first of all, again, thank you for that tour you gave me on the project, and I got to see firsthand the piping, the installation, the work that it takes to do that. In regards to the piping, I know it's special piping that you order. Have you had supply chain issues with that, with your contractors?
Well, we certainly are concerned about that. We have not at this point. We were fortunate with Finished Water 3A that the pipe, the PVC pipe was already contracted early enough to be able to be delivered on time. We have since been working with and reaching out to suppliers to see if you know, for example, steel pipe is available, and also as part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, they do have requirements on Buy America, Build America, so we need to make sure that we're able to purchase materials that are actually made in the United States, made in America, and used on our projects.
I appreciate that. And also, now, the members of the Water Authority, we're still at the City of Clovis, Town of Elida, City of Portales, and the City of Texaco?
Correct.
And they each have members on the board?
That's correct. The City of Clovis has 3 members as the largest entity of the authority, the largest member at a little over 74%. Then the City of Portales has 2 members, and then Texaco and Elida rotate every year with 1 member.
Okay.
So we just actually appointed
Mayor
the
Dixon.
Elida mayor to
Oh,
serve
okay,
on
Durwood Dixon.
for 1 year.
And we've been working, and I said Epcor is with Texaco. We looked at their wells. There's some issues with their wells there and the water. And of course, part of that issue, and we worked with New Mexico Tech and some of the geologists there with New Mexico Tech, is when it appears that when the farmers start watering their crops, their wells in Texaco start going down a little bit. When they stop, the levels come up a little bit, not much. And so we've been trying to assist them with that. And I was glad to hear about the report on the Texaco tying it to the airport and going down that way. And so that was really, I appreciated that. You know, the other thing is, we have to think about this water system, about our future, not maybe ours, but our kids and grandkids. And I've always used a quote from Helen Keller: "It's what's worse than being blind is a community without vision." And I see the Water Authority, the members, having vision to try to provide water for our future and our kids and our grandkids. And so hopefully, I think with the money that has been provided, it's a huge step and the work that's being done. And I appreciate the work, as you administrator, appreciated the work that Justin had started with the Water Authority. Is hopefully we can see a little bit light in the future for sustainability of water for our communities in the eastern part of our state. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good comments, thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Rowley, Dr. Smith, any questions?
Not at this time.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Ortega, thank you. Appreciate the update. Okay, we'll move down to number 6, which is for the good of the order. Does anybody have anything else that needs to be brought up or discussed? If not, the date and time of our next meeting is 8:30 Monday, October 10th. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.